What's up guys, Luke here from the Shark Pod. Today we're talking to Graham Kenny about how to buy a football club in Ireland. It's a little bit misleading because if you want to buy a football club the way he did, you will have to get into business with some fraud people in the UK, and you're going to have to hook up with an ex-Ireland football manager. But really interesting story. Hope you enjoy this one. If you'd like to hear the full story, subscribe, find our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And you can take it from there. But this one's a really interesting one from our new friend, Graham Kenny. So over to Graham, tell us how to buy a football club. Here we go.
Obviously, in these times, I'm hoping next week to complete the first High Court examinership, which is an insolvency restructuring process. So certainly through my own experiences, I've I suppose learned how to deal in crises, and I've seen extraordinary crises, and I've had quite unbelievable interactions with people. I mean, there was one guy, they will make a film about this guy one day. I've never actually been able to talk about him before, but I befriended this guy who would have said he was a billionaire at the time, which I seriously doubt, but certainly he was worth 300 or 400 million. And I was flying over to London to meet him. He was originally Irish born. I was flying over to London to meet him every week. He had an investment vehicle called Arcadia, which is very important. And the spelling of that is Aorkaga, and I was his lawyer at the time. And I'll explain the significance of that wording in a moment. I would have gone over to him. I would have invested heavily with him at the time. He essentially was a fraudster. I didn't appreciate this at the time, but he was quite genuinely worth this at least 300 or 400 million, to the point where George Mitchell, who I think was the head of, I think it was Royal Bank of Scotland at the time, left that position to become CEO of this gentleman's fund. I flew over, I met him in this house that was like a castle, effectively. And I'd go over most weekends. He was incredibly good, a confidence trickster, to the extent that he knew, for example, the first house that I revert to that I bought was on Bloomfield Avenue. The reason I bought that house in my 20s was simply because I'm quite in love for James Joyce, and the main character was named after the house, Mr. Bloom. So I went down, that's how I got into it. I said, I have to buy this house. I went over to this guy. He presented me with an original Ulysses, which cost a fortune, and I was like, he's sitting in his library. I was like, this is just incredible. All the while, little did I know that I'm being sucked in to make investments with him. He then came up. He then invited me to dinner. At one of the dinners was a former football Ireland manager. And he said, the gentleman I was visiting was originally from Cork. We got discussing football. I was never particularly good at football, but my father loved it. He got a great idea then that we buy Cork City Football Club, which he did. You can Google this and say Arcadia bought it. And there's a reason, I'll tell you the name. The idea was that this Ireland manager would help in getting players or something of that nature in. Peripheral involvement, but nonetheless very interesting. I put the company through examinership. We bought it. Because my father liked soccer, I made my father the CEO of Cork City Football Club. So we had this football team all the time. To cut a very long story short, all of that ultimately collapsed through, like I say, it was a confidence trickster. I subsequently found out then that this man had escaped from the Maze Lankesh as an IRA prisoner in like 1971, 1972. The gentleman running, escaping with him, was shot in the back of the head. That same individual, and the reason I say Arcadia, he told me afterwards, was kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke of, it was Arcadia, which is the English spelling of the Irish Arcadia, which meant our friends. Yeah. He then turned out to have a fraud conviction in 1996 for selling Lamborghini cars in Ireland, which he claimed he was doing on behalf of the IRA. The story just got more bizarre as it went on. I attended this man's, he flew me in to Cardiff University because they were naming a wing after him. Because he donated money for their cancer research, which I was, and this was where I was being drawn in to invest quite a lot of money, which was effectively a con. But to show the level of the con, of the craziness of those times, I flew into Cardiff University, and Big McFarlane, who was a hunger striker, was playing the fiddle or something for him at this party. Cardiff University, and you can Google this afterwards because it sounds like a made-up story, subsequently changed the name back of the wing they named after him because they found out he was a fraudster. They got no money. This guy took my money. Ultimately, he lost his house. George Mitchell left Arcadia, presumably after finding out what the whole thing was about, and the vermins, the IRA, and all the rest. But the one thing I learned from that guy was, if you become what you say you are. So and we were talking about kind of briefly before we came on at the start in terms of sales and where to position yourself. You become what you are. And this guy was the pinnacle. I saw, like, he genuinely was worth probably 400 million. He'd tell you he was a billionaire, but he was genuinely worth about 400 million. All of that money was made on these statements of what he said he was, and people just buy into that in anything. So in any business, in mine, if you come out, and you obviously have to have a degree of substance. If you claim to be the best at what you are, and look, you're probably aware, there's a client of mine, Conor McGregor. If you come out and you say you are that thing, you become that thing in people's minds. You're the best. You become that thing. And this guy, unfortunately for me, because I ended up suing him in Jersey over a long period of time, not getting where we scuttled off money, not getting €1. If you come out and you say this is what you are, and you say you can eyeball people, and this guy could probably do it so well because he had some kind of psychiatric condition that he believed, like any good lie has such a grain of truth in it. Like, there was a lot of truth in surrounding what he said. People just buy into that. So there's some kind of balance between having the confidence to say what you are, obviously not to that crazy extent, and turning that into reality. I'm not one of these believers in either this secret and put it out to the universe and you become it or otherwise. Believe me, as I sat on my couch with my head in my hands in around the 2012, I was putting everything out to the universe, and I wasn't giving me a whole lot back. But if you can stand up and tell people you're okay during those times, people buy into that. You are what you are, exactly what you transmit. So I'm not one of these people of vibrations and the sun's rays are picking me up or otherwise. But the reason I give that example, for a period of time, we were running football clubs, and I was flying over, this guy, Bentley driver, picking me up in London to bring me to this castle every week. He's sitting in a pool with his Russian girlfriend that he's telling me is the son of an oligarch. I bought into it. And not just me, the heads of many banks bought into this. You become exactly what you project.